this is the Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette. Like, beauty is kind of in the eye of the beholder.
I think there'll be a lot of people that have him in their top 5.
Top 5 would be rich.
Top 5 would be very rich. Maybe top 8.
That'd be like Bill Gates rich.
It could also be Aerotine International rich.
Just waiting on patent pending to have governmental and civilian uses.
Name of the company, Aerotine International. It is a cutting-edge, high-tech firm out of the Midwest awaiting imminent patent approval on a next generation of radar detectors that have both huge military and civilian applications. Now, right now, John, the stock trades over the counter at 10 cents a share. And by the way, John, our analysts indicate it could go a heck of a lot higher than that. Your profit on a mere $6,000 investment would be upwards of $60,000.
Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers joining you for a very exciting episode. We are kicking off early position rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft. Last time you officially heard from the two of us when it comes to ranking these prospects was summer scouting. So it's been a long time. We've got regular season film in the books. The college football regular season is done. For some guys, that's the last down that they're going to play in college. But for others, we'll have some bowl games and things like that. And so, as we'll say at the very top of this, it's early position rankings. We're going to have the All-Star circuit. We're going to have the bowl games. We're going to have the combine, obviously. So things can certainly change. But Connor and I wanted to dig into 20 of these players that we have ranked here for you, talk about some regular season film notes, our thoughts of them going into the offseason, and sort of where we believe they will, or who they could be, I should say, as pros. Connor, I'm excited, man. How you doing?
I'm great. This is one of our favorite shows of the year because it just brings in so many communities. It's the people that are into the draft. It's people that are into college football. It's people that are into dynasty and fantasy. I think wide receiver has become such a focal point across the NFL for that variety of reasons. It is such a fantasy-focused position. It is a premium position now in the NFL. I wouldn't say it always has been. So, and what the biggest reason is we've been spoiled year after year with insane draft classes, and it makes the stacking them a lot more difficult, quite frankly, when you have that kind of depth at a position that is going to come off the board in giant waves in the top 100 of the draft. And this class is no different than those. I'm not going to say it's as good as the ones we've had in recent history, but obviously the sheer volume of it that will be drafted early, I don't think that will change too much. So we're going to have a lot of fun today, especially since we went really deep on this group over the summer, which admittedly for me, Trevor, really, really helped. It sets out such a nice foundation that I felt like I was rewatching about 70% of the guys. And then I did get to a lot of new players, and a handful of them, find their way in the cluster of rankings that we're going to do today. So this is just such a great exercise.
Yeah, anybody that's been hanging out with us since summer scouting, when we take a deep dive during the summer, what we think these guys can be at the NFL with a full year at least of tape that's sort of coming up from them, that's the fun part, right? Is you get these early strengths and weaknesses, and then here now doing early positional rankings, we go through all their regular season film, which, can be 10, 11, 12 games. Not that we're watching all of them, but there's so much film on these guys. And what we do now is we get to go back to their strengths and weaknesses that we had from the previous season. Say, okay, did we still see these strengths? If we did, great. It's good to know. Did we see new strengths from them? Did we see them mitigate their weaknesses a little bit more? Did more weaknesses show up? And so that really helps. Like, for everybody out there, I understand, like, some people watching and listening to this podcast, y'all are sickos. You care about the draft at 365 like we do, and we love you for it. We really do. Anybody out there who sort of like dabbles in the NFL draft but really enjoys it but doesn't get into it until this point, it's hard to go back and find the time to watch what they were last year combined with what they were this year to really round out the scouting report. So when you get to break it up in different portions like we kind of do on this channel, like we do on the show, to me, it paints the clearer picture. So with that, we're giving you 20. We're giving you our top 20s here, early wide receiver rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft. As you guys can see, my setting's a little bit different. I'm at my parents' house. It's a road game for me. The camera that I normally use to shoot this show, one of the cords broke, and so I can't even. So we're going through adversity here. We're playing through it. We're working through it. But we knew that we had to give you guys the wide receiver episode. So
you moved back home because we don't do mock drafts anymore?
What'd you say?
You moved back home with your parents because we don't do mock drafts anymore?
Because we haven't been doing as many mock drafts. Yes. Yeah.
Times are tough.
My landlord evicted me. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do it. We're going to go. So the format of this show, we'll go a little bit quicker with the guys 20 through 11. And then I think we should spend a lot more time on those guys in the top 10 that we think could be highly impact NFL players. But we wanted to make sure that we gave you the depth too. Let's go 20 through 15, or actually it would be 20 through 16. Give me those 5 players for you. Maybe a nugget or a scouting point where you're watching these guys, good or bad, that you like to highlight. And then if there's some names on there, we could have a little bit of a conversation. We'll move into the next 5, and then we'll get into the top 10.
Right. So what's so fascinating to my 20 to 11 is so many of them are all-star game guys that I'm not going to say I'm going to rip up an eval because they had a good day or bad day of practice. But
I will.
But I absolutely will. No, but but it just helps your process.
Did Lad McConkey cook your ass on a route? Get out of here.
You're done. You're not draftable anymore. Say goodbye to your round 3 grade. It helps when they're all clustered together to go see those guys on a practice field in a football environment. And of course, as we always say, man, does testing matter so much for wide receivers. And I don't mean just testing at the combine, but also height, weight, measurements, hand size, arm length. It's not one little thing. It's everything built up together and what can give a prospect a little bit of a boost. But let's jump right into the early rankings here. And I'll start at 20 for me is Ty Felton from Maryland, a vertical speed threat that had his most productive season this year. At 19, I had Torrey Horton from Colorado State, a very familiar name. Unfortunately for Torrey, he had a season-ending injury this season that hurt his production after being one of the most productive receivers in college football the 2 previous years. At 18, another Maryland guy in Caden Prather. So that's Ty Felton's teammate.
Can I call him your boy? Am I allowed to call him your boy? Because I don't know, you shouted him out during summer scouting. Do you like him enough for me to call him your boy?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right.
I kind of, it's tough when a guy's 18th, but at summer scouting, I think he made my top 15. He definitely did. And he had less production this year than he did in previous years, but he's got size. We're going to talk about the Maryland offense a little bit because I know you and I both watched each of these guys. Mm-hmm. He's an interesting prospect. 17 for me was Savion Williams from TCU, who is, I mean, one of the most interesting watches you can have because he doesn't play just wide receiver. They also use him as like a legitimate running threat. And I don't say running back because he'll take direct snaps. They'll use an extension of the pass game as their run game with him. He's a tackle breaker. I saw Jim Nagy on, I think he might have been responding to me. He basically was like, this is going to be a Cordarrelle Patterson kind of player.
I love the comp.
Me too. The body types are so similar. The play style is so similar. Obviously for Cordarrelle, it took a while for an NFL coach to understand how to utilize him. But once they did, it extended his career. It felt like a bonus 6 years. Arthur Smith's favorite player, it feels like at times. So he's somebody I'm really interested to watch throughout this process. I wouldn't be surprised now that I have him at 17 if he ended up higher for me when all is said and done. 16 was Brew McCoy from Tennessee, who there's context needed with Brew, who is Horace Bruiser McCoy, by the way.
Wait, his first name is Horace?
That's what the internet tells me.
It's like a Harry Potter character.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, honestly.
Horace Brew McCoy? That's a Harry Potter character. You're lying. This is a plant.
It's a 6'3", 220. I don't know how many wizards in Harry Potter were 6'3", 220.
Brew McCoy just beats the shit out of Voldemort with his hands.
He's just holding up Ron Weasley with one finger. They're casting spells on him, and nothing's working.
Like the final scene in Harry Potter where there's like the big battle, he just walks up to Voldemort and just grabs him by the throat, and Kane choke slams him through the castle. Oh, movie's over. The movie could have saved you 7 movies.
I was gonna say, sorry, J.K. Rowling, you just lost 7 books.
What if Brew McCoy was in there?
In the tank.
What if Brew McCoy was in there in like the first movie when they're like middle schoolers and he's still like 6'5"?
They're pipsqueaks. The Sorting Hat doesn't pick where Brew McCoy does. Brew McCoy picks where the Sorting Hat goes.
100%.
Oh my God.
Horace.
I don't know how he got there, but Horace Bruiser McCoy, he had 4 surgeries on an ankle injury from 2023. So when you look up the production this year and you're like, wow, it's, for a wide receiver ranked and he got a Senior Bowl invite and he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, I believe, you're like, I don't understand this. But when you watch the tape, you do get a better idea of the player. Team captain, I think one of the best run blocking, if not the best run blocking wide receiver in the draft. He's phenomenal after the catch. We're going to have a conversation about Brew McCoy, and maybe it's not today. If I was a scout/coach in the NFL and was interviewing him, I would pick his brain on gaining 15 pounds and being a move tight end in a scheme that likes to run outside zone, get their tight ends moving in the run game as blockers. I think he can be an effective threat in that capacity rather than just being a perimeter wide receiver all the time. But it's a longer conversation. But yeah, that's where I landed on 20 through 16. I'm really fascinated how you stacked all these guys because I could see ours being really different with just how I thought this group, like, yes, they're different in the wide receiver rankings, but when I rank them on a big board, I don't think the gap would be very large for all of these guys, 20 to 11.
Yeah, that's sort of what happens with wide receiver. I think it's just, it's littered. We watch so many of these guys. It's just littered throughout a top 250, 300, whatever it is. There's just so many wide receivers. Wide receivers and DBs are the most drafted positions every single year. And so you get a lot of these guys that you're right. It's not separated by too much. So Brew was the one guy who you listed there who I didn't get a full early ranking of. I had ranked him earlier in the season, and I really do like him. I like the athletic potential. It's still there. Super highly sought after recruit when he was coming out of high school. The injuries obviously suck, but somebody that, like you said, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do at the Senior Bowl because, it's going to be in an offense outside of Tennessee's offense, and we've seen with some of the wide receivers that have come through Tennessee, over the last couple of years. I don't want to say that it's a fake offense because that's not really giving it credit to what it's doing at the college level and what Josh Heupel's able to do, but it's able to sometimes mask some deficiencies, and you're not as involved on every single play as some of these other wide receivers might be in other programs and other offenses. So
you got to play the slot, is what you're saying. Like Jalen Hyatt got put in the slot and was unstoppable.
Well, Jalen Hyatt got put in the slot because he couldn't get off press coverage, and putting him in the slot. Yes, I mean it's basically like it's 20 yards between him and the nearest DB. And yes,
not to sound like the biggest hater or toot my own horn because there's no victory lap here yet, but that's why I thought Cedric Tillman was the better player, despite having less buzz and hype. And I know there's a lot of NFL left for both of them, but. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes back to your point about evaluating that offense and why Brew doesn't have the numbers you would expect from a wide receiver ranked.
So just to touch on two of the guys that were within your top 50 who are top 20 that are just outside.
Slow down, partner.
Getting to top 50, not quite yet.
I haven't spoken to my wife all week. I'm doing wide receiver rankings.
Good.
Not doing 50.
Good.
Yeah.
Ty Felton, I have ranked 23rd. Caden Prather, I have 21st. So I see it similarly to you where Ty
real
Felton
close.
Way more productive in that offense. I mean, they prioritized Ty Felton way more than they did Caden Prather. I think Caden Prather is the much easier projection to the pro level. I did not see a lot of difference-making ability in Ty Felton's game, I'm going to be honest with you. And so I wonder if I watch a lot more of these prospects, if Felton ends up being one of these guys who, hey, maybe he's a late-round gem for one of these teams. Very clearly, he understands what it's like to be an emphasis in the offense. But I was sort of looking for that difference-making trait from him, because he got over 1,300 yards receiving this year, and I didn't really find it. With Prather, at least he's a little bit bigger. I think even Prather's got a little bit more nuance to him, especially when it comes to getting off of press coverage, when it comes to creating a little bit of separation when he's getting vertical.
Yep.
And he's a bigger bodied dude. He's just got a better catch radius, and he's stronger at the catch point. So I'm with you. I like Caden Prather a little bit more than I did Ty Felt for those two Maryland guys. Getting into my top 20, number 20, I've got Kyron Lacey from LSU.
Okay.
This is somebody who I thought that I would be a lot higher on, and somebody who
I thought you would be too. He's not in my top 20, just to get that out of the way.
So the highs of Kyron Lacey, especially at the beginning of the season, you go and you watch that USC game, you go, oh, we got something here, folks. And he's got some fantastic catches, but you watch the rest of the season, and I just felt as though his game really lacked polish. To me, Kyron Lacey is one of those players where if you're playing a game of pickup, the football on the playground, he's somebody who it's just like the arm length, some of the long speed, some of the high point catchability you absolutely love, but there's not a lot of polish to him. Doesn't really have a variety of releases to get off of press coverage. He struggles to do so because of that. He's not a really nuanced route runner. He's basically just hey, I'm going to kind of get vertical on you. You're going to throw me the football, and I'm going to high point a little bit, but he's not even good enough, in my opinion, consistently at high pointing the football. So Lacy is somebody who his highs, like Lacy's 10 best plays, I feel like you could talk about with guys who are in my top 10. There's just not enough consistency. And when you get to the NFL level, it's got to be more than just talent. You've got to have that polish to you, and I didn't think that he did. Juice Wells is. You want to hit on Kyron real quick?
No, we don't have to go too long on these guys. I echo a lot of what you said. It was a consistency thing for me why he was just on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Juice Wells from Ole Miss is number 19 for me. Another guy who, if you've been listening to the show for a couple of years, one, shout out, we love you. I had Juice Wells borderline a top 5 receiver going into last year's draft in 2023 because of an incredible 2022 season that he had with South Carolina. He's dealing with a foot injury basically all of 2023. Xavier Legette kind of takes over as the top wide receiver in that group because Juice Wells missed so much time, and even when he was out there, he was clearly playing hurt. So he transfers over to Ole Miss this year. Connor, he's not the same player, and I don't even think it's injury related. He looks so disinterested this season, and it's such a bummer to me. And I hate calling out any. So I don't want to say it's like effort or whatever. Like I hate to call people out in that regard, but. This guy looked like Des Bryant light at times when he was at South Carolina. He was a monster at contested catch opportunities. He's built really well. He's got good explosiveness, good wiggle, good long speed for his size. And even when he wasn't able to win with speed, damn, he could win with contested catches when he was at South Carolina. He didn't even look close to that player. Specifically, with scouting, I learned this from, listening to a lot of guys who have been doing this a long time. Daniel Jeremiah is one of these guys who, he'll say, hey, the big games matter for a lot of these guys, right? NFL teams want to see, what do you like when you play in a rivalry game? What do you like when you're playing for a championship? What do you, something like that. Juice Wells played South Carolina in South Carolina this year. And outside of one giant slant route that he took against cover 3 for like a 70-yard run, which he actually, the ball fumbled out of his hands before the end zone, and it went into the end zone and didn't even get a touchdown. It ended up being a touchback. So outside of that play, Connor, I saw no fire from this guy. Nothing. No competitiveness. Buddy, you're playing your old team. And you kind of you kind of left in a way where you were spurning South Carolina a little bit when you were out the door. This was a moment for you. And I felt the same way when they played Mississippi State. He looks like a shell of the player that I saw in 2022. So I was disappointed in that. I'm not giving up on him. I think the talent's in there, but man, it's like you got to hit the reset button when you get to the NFL. So Juice Wells is 19 for me. Evan Stewart from Oregon, I have at 18. I'm still waiting for it for Evan Stewart, man.
That's the name of the game, right?
I'm still waiting for it. And this should have been the year. You got Dylan Gabriel to throw you the football. You are the wide receiver 1 on this team. He was not dominant the way that you think people talk about Evan Stewart for him to be dominant. I didn't even think he was the best speed option player on that team. We're going to get to a wide receiver who is his teammate a little bit higher in my rankings that I thought even held that role a little bit better. So Evan Stewart, I got at number 18. 17, I got Pat Bryant from Illinois, a player who I do really like his game. I think he is a solid NFL player. I think he lacks a little bit of long speed, a little bit that ability to continuously threaten vertically, but man, he could block really well. He's a great rotational X option for you. I don't know if he'll ever be a consistent starter, but built like an NFL player, plays like an NFL player, even if he lacks a little bit of athleticism. And then the last guy for me here in this group, 16 is Kobe Hudson from UCF. I wanted to like this guy more, man. I love the way that Kobe Hudson sets you up. I mean, he was I want to make sure that I get this right here. He was a state championship basketball player, or at least he played basketball in high school at a very high level, and you watch him run his routes, it's like he's got a basketball in his hand. It's like he is a point guard or a shooting guard, and he is crossing you up. He is moving his shoulders. He is flashing his hands. He's doing all sorts of stuff with his feet to make sure that he can set you up in a lot of ways. I love the nuance in how he is able to run a lot of his routes. He just, to me, is a little bit limited athletically. And again, why he's a little bit lower on this list. He does a lot of the little nuanced things very, very well, but the top speed, to me, it was just something that held me back too much from him being higher on this list.
A great list. A handful of those guys were just outside looking in for me. one guy that I think we see exactly the same. We both like him a lot. You just kind of get lost in the shuffle. I think you had Pat Bryant at 17, right? I had him at 15.
Okay.
And you watch Pat Bryant, and it's phenomenal the jump he made this year. There was more put on his plate to be a leader. I sat down with him at Big Ten Media. I hit a couple of guys on this list, Ty Felton as well. Like, I really like these guys. They are leaders. They are very focused.
And that matters. That part matters when you get to
it matters
watch
so
these
much.
guys.
And their coaches
guys, I should say.
Their coaches had nothing but great things to say about them. And that's not just false words, because they choose 3 guys to bring to Big Ten Media, and that's representing your university on an entire college football roster. So it backs up the words. And I think I was just really impressed with not only the leadership role Pat Bryant took on this year, but how it transpired on the field. As a physical player, he plays inside and outside. He can run through people after the catch. He's very notable and very noticeable in the red zone. If he continues to grow, he'll be a good pro. He just was not a late starter, but it's just, this was his breakout year. And I'm excited to see what he could do at the Senior Bowl, because I think he's a really all-around solid player with size. It's kind of a jack-of-all-trades guy rather than mastering one kind of skill. Although if I did kind of look at a skill that he has, I think he's a red zone threat, and that matters in today's NFL. So I think we saw him the same.
Yep.
Item as wide receiver 15. Go ahead.
I was just going to say my early working comp for him is Tyler Johnson. Actually, I feel like they're built pretty similarly.
I think he's bigger though, right?
He is. He's a little bit tall. He's taller. He's a little bit taller. He doesn't have as much mass, because Tyler Johnson, I think, weighed in at like 205, 206 to the combine.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Pat Bryant's actually, he plays bigger than this, but he's only listed at 200. So I think that he's got a little bit more height to him. But to me, that contested catch type of a wide receiver style though was what I saw from Pat Bryant there.
Wide receiver 14 for me was a guy I know you really liked this summer, and I totally get it. Xavier Restrepo from Miami.
You've named 2 players now
that you're way higher on.
That I'm going to be a lot higher on.
Who is the one from last group? Oh, Savion Williams.
I mean, I was going to say you're going to have to stick around to find out, but yeah, him.
No, I get that one. Like, he was somebody I shout out right away. Like, it wouldn't shock me if I end up way higher on him.
Right.
Restrepo.
I'll say this about Savion to give people a little, you gotta listen to find out. I'll be shocked if I could be that much higher on him. So.
Wow. Okay. Wide receiver 1.
He's not wide receiver 1. He's not
Take
wide
a hike,
receiver
Travis
1,
Hunter. Restrepo is such a safety blanket for Cam Ward. He's a good route runner. He's quick. He's reliable. He does all the little things the right way. He understands how to attack zone coverage. Is a 5th-year senior. I have him at 5'9" and 5'8", 199. They only play him in the slot, and he's only going to play in the slot at the NFL level. And I think something people will notice with me as they listen to more and more of this show, and this has changed for me a lot the last 2 years. It wasn't like this for the first couple of years of me doing the draft. It is very hard for me, unless you are special, to be a top 5 wide receiver in a draft if you are a small slot only player. And that's just because the success rate in NFL history won't be on your side. Now, I think Restrepo is absolutely an NFL player. I think there's a world where he is the starting wide receiver 3 on an NFL team and a really good possession threat. And this is someone that had 53 first downs in 2023, another 53 in 2024. Like, he is a consistent player that has really good hands. I think he's good through contact considering his size. He's 15 to 28 on contested catches the last 2 years. He's just a smaller guy that's going to live in the slot, and you have to have that spot open in your offense for him to succeed. But he is every bit of an NFL player because of his reliability. I thought he had average speed too. I didn't think he was an explosive slot. I thought he had good, like adequate NFL speed.
Yes, I would agree with that part of it. Yeah.
So wide receiver 14 for me. Wide receiver 13 for me is someone that I think did themselves a lot of favors this year, and that's Tez Johnson of Oregon, who...
Hell yeah, baby.
I mean, this is a 4-3
Hell yeah.
guy.
Hell
now,
yeah. This is who I was talking about.
Let's be clear with Tez. When you're 160 pounds, you have to run a 4-3. So, but that's okay, because he does. He's... Not a lot of guys this size, and you're going to hear a ton of Tank Dell and that elk with him, are drafted very, very early, but transfer from Troy to Oregon, he can just stretch the field with vertical wheels. He eats up single coverage. He's got sharp cuts. When he's isolated, it's very hard for one defender to match his movements in space. He is every bit of what Mike McDaniel dreams of in an offense that creates all that kind of space. He also is a great punt returner. He averaged almost 12 yards per punt return this year. He brought one back to the house, which playing special teams is a huge bonus for a guy like this. He's just very slender, limited catch radius, probably a slot. I think a slot only.
Has to be.
Relatively simple route tree, but effective in what he's asked to do. And I think teams are just going to value his kind of game-breaking speed.
Mm-hmm.
Right ahead of him at wide receiver 12 is, I want to make sure I had that right. Yeah, 12.
Yep.
Is his teammate, Evan Stewart. And
Okay.
I think you nailed it. Evan Stewart, man, who I was really high on this summer. I had him in the top 10. Like former 5-star from A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you want from a skill movement standpoint when you just watch him. But man, on a snap-by-snap basis, he's almost a guy that the more you watch of him, you're like, why aren't you so much better?
Yes.
And there's times where I think Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon offense doesn't do a good enough job keeping him involved. I'll admit that. Like, I didn't think it was perfect. And A&M had this problem with him too. And he's slender. He's 6 feet tall, but I don't even know if he's 180 pounds. I had him listed 175 from our summer data. He's just so hot and cold, Trevor.
Yep.
He's so hot and cold. Listen to this.
I just think there's too much cold. Like
8. You want to bet 8 games this year? 8 with less than 30 receiving yards.
Can't be. Can't be, man. I just
Yeah.
there is absolutely something to guys being better pros than college players, right? There's absolutely something to that. I understand that, and we talk about this. We're going to talk about this more here on today's show, but it's got to be better than that. You're in an offense that's tailored to throw the ball to you. Like, you're in an offense that's tailored to get you involved so much more than you are now. And so, you know, with Evan Stewart, again, I don't even think he was the best speed player on his team.
No,
I thought Tez was better
right now. Yeah.
Tez a better route runner. He sets up people better after the catch. He's a better, honestly, like, he's a better deep threat right now.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Tez Johnson was more productive than Evan Stewart at Oregon's offense. And it wasn't just because I will complain about college offenses and college offensive coordinators and how much they emphasize one person over the other. I'll complain about that all the time. But in this offense, it should have been Evan Stewart, in my opinion. And I don't think Evan Stewart comes to Oregon if they're not talking to, if Dan Lanning's not talking to him as if he's going to be the wide receiver 1. And it just didn't play out like that.
Yeah,
I get worried about him. I really do.
I do too. My counter would be Tez has already been in this offense and had plenty of success in this offense. So I think you saw that.
No, and that's fair. That's a fair counter. I'll say this too. Evan Stewart's a first percentile yards after catch receiver over the last 2 years. First percentile. And like, that's not good. You want to be 99th percentile.
Which is weird.
Which is really weird.
His athletic background as a sprinter, triple jump, and long jump guy is standout. So
he's state champion long jumper. Yeah, he is.
Like, you watch him, and he is literally the definition of polarizing, enigma. I'm sitting here, and I'm like, man, I want you to be so good, and I think it's in there. And I think there's moments of him. There was one game I watched. I want to pull it up right now to just make sure I get this right. Where if you want to like him and see why there's people that will be really high on him, I hope he goes back to school, by the way, because
at this point I do too. I think he could be a first rounder. I don't want to draft him off of the tape that he's put out here over the last 2 years. I think
he could be a first rounder in 2026 if he goes back to school.
Because I think he was all SEC, or at least he was an all freshman when he was at Texas A&M that first season.
The Ohio State game where he went 7 for 149
is his best game,
which is hell of a time.
Yeah.
That's why it's easy to fall in and be like, man, he is a good player, but he is not a consistent player. And that's where I landed on him being at wide receiver 12, which I didn't expect that.
He had 33 receiving snaps in the Big Ten championship game against Penn State. He had 1 target, 0 catches.
1 target, yeah. I know.
Again, like I understand that there's a lot of things that wide receivers cannot control. I totally understand that.
Yeah.
It's got to be better than that. And I just I cannot help but wonder why with Evan Stewart. And I wasn't super impressed. It's not like I saw a lot of meat on the bone when I was watching the film. It's not like I was like, wow, Oregon's crazy for not getting this guy the ball. I get it. I understood it. So
right. Yeah. They had a few games where they're just blowing people out, so they don't need to really pump up his numbers, but it's still, there's not every game like that where he had a bad game.
I'm waiting. I've been waiting for it for 2 years now with Evan Stewart, unfortunately.
11 is a guy I'm really torn on, who I know people just absolutely love. And we had the same conversation over the summer. Trey Harris from
I got
Ole
him in
Miss.
the same range. He's tough to crack.
He is, I mean, he like this year's Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette type of not player, but like struggle to evaluate. That's how I was like, man, here we go again. Where, and Trey had he had a groin injury this year. It cost him the last 4 of 5 games down the stretch.
He tried to play in the Florida game and then he re-injured.
Yeah, it just didn't work. But he missed 4 or 5 games, really 5 when you bring up like that. He had over 1,000 yards. It's ridiculous.
No, very clearly, but it does bother me that like a lot of his yards is at the beginning of the season against
cupcakes.
Just the sweetest of cupcakes.
Yeah. I mean, he does what we all do in EA CFB Dynasty when like you have a juicy matchup and you want your guy to win the Heisman.
100%.
Like you're playing Furman and it's like, okay, 17 catches, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, correct.
Like, and it's like Trey Harris is a good player. I want to make this clear.
No, he is. But
like there is some of that.
I liked him more than I thought I was going to.
Me
too. I'll be honest with you.
So I'll tell you why, and I'm curious if you agree. There's things he is special at. I think he is incredible at positioning himself. He makes some of the most unique catches, like finding ways to secure the ball when he had no business ever catching the ball.
Yeah.
The way he positions himself, he kind of like can duck and reach and all these weird movements to find a way to catch the ball. He does, like, he's out on the field, and I think he is the least afraid player I've watched in this draft so far. Like, he does not care if he's going to get clotheslined, speared, anyone around him, contact. With the ball in his hands, he wants to stiff arm you and just embarrass you. But I think it's everything before the catch is where I have my worries.
Yeah, he's not really a great route runner. He doesn't have a lot of different releases off the line of scrimmage against press.
That's number one.
I can't remember how much against press that he has faced, but anyways, when it comes to his overall routes, it's a lot of just vertical stuff. It's 9 routes, it's comebacks, it's posts, and that's about it. They don't ask him to run a lot of different stuff. He's not like an over the middle of the field type of like, long crosser, dagger concept player. They just don't ask him to do it a lot.
Yeah, it's Ole Miss offense.
It's just the Ole Miss offense, and they know exactly what they need to do, and they know exactly how to get it to one of their best receivers. And so Trey Harris does a very good job of doing what Ole Miss wants him to do. And those are the tough players to evaluate when you go, okay, you didn't really show me more here, but I know that this offense isn't asking you to do that. So how would I ask you to do that in your film? And I think that's a very important part of evaluating Trey Harris and why it is difficult and why I love the way that you put that. This is the Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, like, beauty is kind of in the eye of the beholder. There's going to be a lot of people who watch Trey Harris's film and go, this is a one-dimensional type of player. Because last year when I watched him, that's what I thought. This year, I do actually think he's a little bit more nuanced. I do think his footwork has improved. I do think he's making an effort to create separation in more subtle ways. But there are certainly moments throughout his tape where I'm visibly watching a player whose main job it is just to get open on a vertical plane, on a vertical stem. And so some people are going to see the size, speed, contested catch potential with him and fall in love with it. But this is, to me, Trey Harris is going to be the most high variance player that anybody has in wide receiver rankings.
I think there'll be a lot of people that have him in their top 5, honestly.
Top 5 would be rich.
And it'd be very rich.
Would be rich.
Top 5 would be very rich. Maybe top 8.
Everybody's trying to get rich, but that'd be like Bill Gates rich.
It could also be Aerotine International, Rich.
Just waiting on patent pending to have governmental and civilian uses. That's Trey Harris. Trey Harris.
It just came across my desk.
It just came across, and it's just Trey Harris's scouting report. Somebody's gonna run into the general manager's office and be like, "This just came across my desk. It's awaiting
like you get film in the mail.
Patent approval." Okay, let's get into my 15 through 11 before we get into the top 10s. Obviously, Jalen Noel, actually is how you say his last name. I have learned. So already messed that up once here on the show. Told myself I wasn't going to do it. And guess
We're just
what?
in the Christmas spirit.
Boy, he did it. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to be festive out here. Jalen Noel. I'm sticking with it for this episode. Just kidding. I'm not going to respect the man's family like that. Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Did you watch him?
I certainly did. I fucking love him. I absolutely love him.
All right, so on initial watch, so obviously we will get into Jalen Noel a little bit later when we're talking on this show, because I assume that he's going to be in your top 10 here. When I watched him for the first time, I really liked him. I did. Compact build. What's his weight? Is it over 200? I think it's listed at 200. Yeah, he's like 5'11", 200. Just like a compact build type of a dude. He's got a track background to him. High jumper, sprinter, had all that good stuff in high school. And you definitely see it. He's really explosive. I think that it's more than just Jaden Higgins, who is a very popular name in that Iowa State offense that everybody gravitated towards and like, wow, look at this passing offense with Jaden Higgins. Jalen Noel was a big part of why they were successful as well. You know, when I watch him, there is a ton to like athletically. He's got the compact build. He's got great contact balance. I think he's really explosive in short areas. I think he's a really good slot receiver type of a player. He's limited probably to just the slot in the NFL because of his build and sort of his play style. The footwork is pretty precise coming off the line of scrimmage. For him having a sprinter background, I thought he would have a little bit better of long speed sustained. But as I watched, not just his best plays, but all of his plays when we got into final film evaluations, I felt like I was underwhelmed a little bit by his long speed, so I have those concerns, but that's why I've got him at number 15. Obviously, we'll talk about him a little bit more when we get to your rankings, where he is. Torrey Horton from Colorado State is at number 14 for me. Lot to like about this player. Really nuanced in how he plays. I think that he's got great footwork. He's got the long arms. He's got just fantastic hands. I mean, super reliable hands, really high contested catch percentage, really good catchable pass percentage as well. So all that looks good for him. Season-ending knee injury this season sucks. Yeah. I thought he was going to come out of last year's draft. I really did. But
me too.
He plays a little bit bigger than what he actually is, which makes me a little bit nervous. He's only 6'1.5". He's slender. He's about $187 is what they've got him listed at. But for him, I just think he does a lot of the little things at the position very well. I love his competitiveness. I think he's a really competitive blocker despite having a little bit more of a slender build. But like I said, just a really reliable possession type of a receiver that knows how to get open, has decent separation scores, knows how to sit in between zone coverages. I think he's just a really smart football player. Trey Harris, we already talked about a little bit. I have him at number 13. Sort of exactly where you do. Don't exactly know what to do with him. So I've got him in between this 11 to 15 range. Maybe we're in the middle of people who might hate him a lot, might love him a lot. So I'm wondering what other people think about Trey Harris. If you got Trey Harris takes, let us know in the comments. I got Tez Johnson at number 12. Like you said, dude's just great at exactly what you want him to be. When I looked up his measurables, and when I was watching him a little bit earlier this season, 5'10", 160 pounds. 0th percentile, man. Nobody plays the wide receiver position at 160 pounds. And I think a lot of people would go like, well, what about, Tank Dell? Okay, well,
that's going to be it the whole time.
Here's the thing, though. For every Tank Dell, there's 500 players that are built like Tank Dell who didn't make it in the NFL level. However,
correct.
Tez Johnson shows that competitive. I don't think he's quite as short area explosive and nuanced as a route runner. I don't think he's quite as stop on a dime as Tank Dell was, but still, the precision, the footwork, the short area quickness, the acceleration. He's got good top speed to him. You mentioned him being like a 4.4 and below guy when it comes to the 40-yard dash. He's a playmaker when it comes to after the catch stuff. He does have a lot of that stop on a dime. Really great agility and body control stuff when you're looking at after the catch. Dude, he is in the 100th percentile in separation percentage. The dude's just open all the time.
Can't match his movements.
100%. Now, do we have like NFL style DBs that are getting right up in his face in press coverage all the time? No, Oregon kind of hides that deficiency from him, so they don't put him in those situations. But still, man, he can create that separation even from closer single coverage. I think for a single coverage, he's like 95th percentile in separation.
He's phenomenal.
So he's fantastic. He's got a great story of adversity too. For anybody that doesn't know, he grew up in Alabama. I think he was in Birmingham first, and he moved to Pinson, Alabama. His father committed suicide when he was infant, so he was brought up by his mom, who was just struggling paycheck to paycheck kind of a situation, trying to provide for her kids, doing a great job trying to provide for her kids. And when Tez got into football, into high school, football is the way that he said, like, sort of channeled his passion, channeled his anger, gave him something to look forward to. And his high school coach in Pinson, Alabama, was Bo Nix's dad.
Yep.
And his quarterback was Bo Nix. And there came a situation where the Nix family did not like legally adopt Tez Johnson, but for all intents and purposes, I mean, he stayed at their house. He ended up living at their house. He was an extension of their family. So when both of these guys graduated, I believe they won a state championship. Yeah, they won a state championship together when they were at Alabama. When both these guys graduated, Bo obviously went to Auburn. Tez went to Troy as a 3-star recruit. They sort of met back up at Oregon, obviously got to play together last year, which is really cool. And I wondered if, I'm not going to lie, I wondered if the magic was just kind of going to wear off this year. No Bo Nix. Bo Nix isn't throwing him the football anymore. And it's been the complete opposite. He has continued to be a fantastic wide receiver. So he's got that competitiveness in him that goes back to just his roots and sort of how he got started in football and why he loves football. This is a player who you never want to doubt. Dude, he's 160 pounds, and I'm going to be honest with you, he blocks better than Evan Stewart does. He's the better blocker of the wide receivers, and he's fair. And he's a $160. He is so feisty. He is so competitive. He'll give you everything he's got. I like Tez Johnson a lot more than I thought I would when I first looked at his measurables. I'll be honest about that. Number 11 for me is Jalen Royals from Utah State. I like a lot of what Jalen Royals brings to the table. It's just sort of a concern that I had with some of these other wide receivers, like with Kobe Hudson, with Pat Bryant, with players like that, and even with who did we just mention that you like a lot? Jalen Noel. Yep. I just worry about the long speed a little bit here with
I can see that
with Jalen Royals, but other than that, I think Jalen Royals is a good football player. Again, strong hands at the catch point. He's consistently arms extended to make the catch. I always love when guys attack the football in the air. You go get it. You don't let it just come to you. You dictate exactly who's going to get hands on it first. I think he's a nuanced route runner. He's strong versus press coverage. He reminds you a little bit in his build and his play style like a Jamar Chase. Now, he's not Jamar Chase. I want to be very clear, but he is that body type of that more compact, dense dude. People talk about Jamar as he's kind of built like a running back. Jalen Royals got a little bit of that to him. And I don't think he's quite to that level, but he is somebody who loves contacts, loves the yards after contact. He's good in contested catch situations, but unfortunately to me, he's got a lot of practice with it because I don't think he separates super well when it comes to those vertical routes. So to me, just somebody who does a lot of those little things well, somebody I'm excited to see in the all-star circuit, but had a little bit of doubts of him athletically when it comes to really stretching the field. And so I think he's going to be a good contested catch type of a receiver at the NFL level. I think he could be a really nice wide receiver 3, potentially even wide receiver 2 in the NFL level, but we've just got to see him continue to maximize those tough catching situations, which is sort of tough to bet on as much as you have to with Jalen Royals. So that is my 15 through 11 there. Any comments, any thoughts on any of those guys that I named there?
I had Royals at 9, so I think we see him pretty closely. I really, really liked him this summer. I think I had him at 10 over the summer. He had a foot injury this year that I'm sure is going to come up during medicals, so that's something to keep an eye on. But he's somebody to me. And even you watch 2024, it's a lot of, hitch routes and screens, his production. But I thought 2023, which was more productive, there was even more there on tape of variety. And just the way he adjusts and tracks the ball away from his body, as you highlighted, Trevor, it's such a pro kind of feel when you watch him. I thought he definitely gained some weight going into this year. When I watched his 2020, and like he got stronger, not like got fat.
Damn, he got fat. Wow, you're
in
fat shaming on the
2023,
podcast.
when I watched
the man's been eating.
He's been eating good. NIL. When I watched his 2023, I thought a lot of his adjustments to the ball was like Devontae Smith, where he's just got this unique ability to grab the football and track it in close quarters and away from the body.
So you know what my working comp for him is? My early comp? Jermaine Kearse.
Oh yeah, I remember Jermaine Kearse.
You know what I'm saying? So like
Seattle and then the Jets,
what you're talking about, like those like acrobatic contested catches, kind of, you're shifting your body.
Not the biggest guy or tallest guy,
but like just tough as nails at the catch point, full extension type of catches, those contested catch opportunities. I mean, Russell Wilson would throw those deep balls to Jermaine Kearse, and he'd be on the other end of him. He'd be fighting in the air, but he'd be coming down with him. So I love the early Jermaine Kearse comp that I found here.
That's a great one, and he consistently comes back to the ball. That's what he understands how to help his quarterback all the time, and a well-earned Senior Bowl invite for Jalen Royals, who I hope he could practice all 3 days, because I know that foot injury ended his season after week 8. I'm excited. So he was 9. I'll go back here for a second. 10 for me is Jack Bech from TCU.
Yeah, baby.
Is he 10 for you?
No, he's higher for me.
Okay, I mean,
he's 9.
I get it.
He's 9.
Man, is Jack Bech good?
Is that how you say his last name? Is it Bech?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's at least how I threw on a couple like highlights to hear how the announcers say it.
Smart. Veteran move. Move.
Yeah. I didn't want to say it any other way, like Bech. Like
I was going to say Jack Bech, but obviously that's
or Bech. Yeah, it's that the one announcer I heard called him Bech, which makes a lot of sense. Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you here. This was one of the last guys I got to, and thank God it's crazy to me when I went through this. I'll explain how I went through this process. The weirdest thing I did was I watched all the Colorado guys first, just because I just wanted to knock them all out. And they had the most guys I felt like I had to watch. I watched Will Shepherd, Jimmy Horn, LeJontay Wester, and of course, Travis Hunter. So I'm like, let me just watch them all right now. And then I kind of bounced around. And then about halfway through, I'm like, okay, let me watch all my top guys from summer. And then we had the extra day. And I'm like, let me get through as many all-star guys as I could that I haven't seen yet. And Bech was in that category with Brew McCoy and Daquan Felton. The Virginia Tech guys, Jalen Lane as well. I wanted to get, those are the last 4. Like, okay, they got all-star invites. I should watch them. Jack Bech is one of the most high-floor receivers in the draft. And I'll break it down. Like, he's 6'1" and 3/8, 218 pounds. He's a transfer from LSU. He comes into this season kind of as an afterthought from the NFL. Like, he did not really have these crazy summer grades, but he has a breakout year for TCU. He had 62 catches, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. Here's the 2 things with Jack Bech of why I think he's a high floor player and a pro-ready player. He catches literally everything. Everything. He catches everything. Over the middle of the field, outside the numbers, when he gets popped, he catches everything. The second thing is, when they use him as a blocker, whether it's out in front in screens or in the run game, he looks like a tight end. He genuinely looks like he wants to snatch your soul and wear it on a necklace back to the huddle.
It was sort of up in the air of whether he was going to play tight end or wide receiver, but he would have either been a small tight end or a plus size wide receiver. So he just worked on wide receiver, and now he's a full-time wide receiver.
Yeah, so I loved him. I thought there was so much nuance in his game. He caught everything. At 218 pounds, he runs well enough. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's running a 4.35 or a 4.4, but he runs well enough at his weight. So Bech is going to be a darling for the draft community soon. A pleasant surprise. So happy I got to watch him in time before we did this show. Cracks my top 10. So he was 10. Royals was 9.
Bech was great. I mean, can I just talk about Bech?
Please. No, yeah, you might as well do it now. Yeah.
So he was 9 for me, and he was somebody who, when I turned on the tape, I was like, oh wow, okay, thank God that I did, because he is a lot of fun. You mentioned he's 218 pounds, so he's got really good size to him for a wide receiver. Again, it would have been smaller for a tight end, but instead it's bigger for a wide receiver, especially one that can play all over the field like he can. I mean, they could put him in a wingback alignment. He can be totally fine. He can do the power slot roll. Shout out Nate Tice for that term. And I think that he is fantastic at it because he moves well enough to where his size, it's not even just like a pick your poison. It's like, oh, okay, well, he's too big for these guys to cover, but it's a combination of it. Like, he moves so well for his size there. We have a metric of PFF. Anybody that's familiar with baseball knows, wins above average, wins above replacement. He had a very high 0.39 wins above replacement average. And I know for anybody out there that doesn't have a PFF subscription or knows PFF super well, you'll just have to trust me. 0.39 as a wide receiver is one of the better scores that we had this season for these wide receivers. So that's great to see. He's got an 82nd percentile separation percentage, 59th percentile against single coverage alone, contested catch percentage, 96th percentile, and then regular catchable passes, he was in the high 90s as well. So like you said, very sure hands. He's got a great soft spot for where zone coverage is going to be. He's just a high IQ football player that brings you plus size, good athleticism, the quickness, the nuance in his routes. Also, something I really liked about his background, dude, he won 3 basketball state championships and 2 football state championships. Dude's just a goddamn winner.
He really is. That's like an insane amount of accolades from high school.
So I am also really excited to see this player. I think that when we get to the Senior Bowl, he is going to be one of the guys that's absolutely turning heads. I think that he is going to be a big-time one-on-one winner, and he's going to be a big riser throughout the process, specifically once we get to that point in time. His teammate will be as well, who, I'll get to a little bit more later.
Yeah, you like even more.
You had him at number 10. I had him at number 9. We like this player a lot.
Yeah, wouldn't shock me if another guy, like I said about his teammate, Savion Williams, if both of them are higher in my final rankings than my initial rankings, because full transparency, this was the first time I got to see the TCU guys on tape.
Me too.
So far this year. During the season, I didn't get to watch them. Shout out to the Senior Bowl for inviting both of them.
Yep.
Because when those invites came through, I had to get eyes on them right away. 8 for me. One of the more perplexing evals, and my head is I'm going to smash it against the wall all the way to the final rankings over this one, is Isaiah Bond.
I know who it is.
Texas.
Yep, I knew. I have him at 10.
I mean, full transparency for everybody, if you're just tuning in now, I think I had Bond at 4 over summer. Because I was like, people don't move the way this cat moves.
Yeah, I had him at 7, 8. One of those two. I was lower on him than you were going into the summer, but obviously, he moves incredibly well. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's just a lot to unpack. I think we're going to see eye to eye on a lot of the issues. 5'11", 180, transfer from Alabama. Mm-hmm. Somebody that, you're talking about Georgia state title kind of times in the 100 meter, the 200 meter as a junior in high school. He tracks the deep ball. He can just get over the top of the defense so effortlessly that's going to work at the NFL level with the kind of wheels, acceleration, and how agile he is with both of those things. The routes are smooth. He really doesn't lose any speed while he's changing direction.
No. They
play him inside and outside. He makes so many explosive plays when they throw him the ball, but there are so many. It's like the Evan Stewart conversation all over again to a higher degree. I mean, his only 100-yard, I want to make sure I have some of these notes updated. Like he lacks a lot of those big games, number one.
Mm-hmm.
He runs himself into coverage a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And just if it's zone, there's so many times where I'm like, man, if maybe he just needs to be coached up a little bit more, but there's so many times where he doesn't have the same awareness of spacing as some of the other guys in the class do, right?
Tempoing his speed would go such a long way.
It would maximize it.
Now, he used to be a DB. I don't think he was a DB when he was in college, but I know he was a DB and a wide receiver in high school. And I remember I read this quote. I can't exactly remember whether it was when he got to Alabama, his first year at Alabama, or maybe it was, when he was coming out in high school. But he basically was like, I spent more time at DB than I did wide receiver. So it makes sense why his game lacks a lot of polish even here and now at Texas, because he's only a couple years into being a full-time wide receiver. Now, that's not to say that it's automatically going to get better for him. Sometimes I think that as scouts we think, oh, all he needs is time. Well, no, it's what you do with that time. And so it just kind of depends for him. But he is one of those guys where you'll hear us talk about this with running backs as well. Vision for running backs. Sometimes running backs have a bad tendency to, okay, I got the ball in my gut. I'm just going to run straight forward. I'm a north to south runner. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait for blocks to set up. I'm just trying to get north to south. This is what coaches want me to do. This is the kind of player that I'm going to be. For Isaiah Bond, it's like he's just 0 to 100. There's no in between. And I think because of that, you see him overrun throwing windows versus zone. I think you watch him crash into off coverage defensive backs when in reality he could absolutely, put a move on him, slow things down a little bit, give himself a little skip and go type of a release, even when he gets to the break point, not even off the line of scrimmage. But to me, it's just it's too much one speed for Isaiah Bond. There is not enough nuance and there is not enough tempoed movements in what he does. And that is always the biggest challenge for wide receivers that have elite athleticism, because their entire football life to this point is just, I am faster than you.
Yep.
And it takes so much more than that to win at the SEC level consistently, which he found out sort of the hard way over the last couple of years. Certainly this year, it's been a struggle for him, consistency. But that's how it's going to be at the NFL level as well. He's just got to be way more nuanced with it.
Absolutely. And what I meant to say before, his only 100-yard game this year was against UTSA. So it's, not that means everything, but that was his big performance in week 3. And then a lot of inconsistencies. And what jumps out to me, and I'll try to get more clarity, like, is he hurt? Is something going on? The last 3 weeks of the season, Trevor, last 3 games, Kentucky, 2 for 27. And I watched the film of these games. So this isn't me box score scouting. I'm like, what am I missing here?
Strictly off film.
Just nothing's happening.
Have you seen those tweets when people do that? I think I'm gonna start this bit.
You're gonna be that guy.
When people go strictly off film, comma, and it's like you're not allowed to disagree with them because they're saying like strictly off film. You know what I'm saying?
You didn't watch the tape. I did.
Or even like, well, whatever numbers you're gonna throw at me, like it doesn't matter. Like I'm just talking strictly off film. I'm gonna start doing that with like other stuff, like strictly off film. The smoked brisket from Chipotle is not nearly as good as the regular steak. Like I'm gonna start.
Then nobody can tell you you're wrong.
100%. Yeah, I'm gonna start that bit. I'm gonna start it.
It reminds me of when somebody made an off-brand drill account, and it was Rockies drill, like the Colorado Rockies. And I have a tweet saved from it that says, "The stats. Hell, I'm looking at the stats right now." It's an all-timer that is so underutilized online. It's literally at Rockies _drill. I've looked at the stats. Hell, I'm looking at the stats right now.
That's what I'm gonna start. That's actually what we need to start doing.
I've had this one in my pocket for a long time. I'm a very sick man. I've kept it in my pocket.
You gotta wait for the right moment. You're smart.
I am. It needs to bang. It can't be like.
No, you can't waste it. You can't waste it.
It can't be Isaiah Bond against Texas A&M where he was shut out, and against Georgia 1 for 22. That was the last 3 games of the season. I just watched the tape and I'm like, if he's hurt, it's one different thing, and we don't know that. I'll tell you right now, Trevor. He is a liability out there for the run and screen game. There's no involvement when things get physical. None.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And a lot of coaches in the NFL just won't like that changes who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That means, okay, so you're going to be you're going to be our third wide receiver in 11 personnel, and you're going to stretch the field versus I might take you in the top 40 and I want you to be on the field at all times.
Right.
Because so the physical aspect of the games concern me. But hey, I mean,
look,
after all that being said, I have him as the 8th wide receiver because he is so physically gifted from a movement speed standpoint.
Yeah, I got him at 10, and I'll be honest, like Tez Johnson's a better version of what Isaiah Bond is supposed to be.
That's right.
But Isaiah's got 20 pounds more on him, and because of that, he just has more potential to kind of hold up in the NFL. But I would not be shocked if there is a world where my final wide receiver rankings have Tez Johnson above Isaiah Bond, because Isaiah Bond and Tez Johnson, both of these guys, really big games coming up, right? Both of these teams are in the college football playoff. They could have a really extended season here with a couple of games that could mean a lot because, like we said, a lot of the biggest games mean a lot to these scouting reports. And so just to sort of like give people an idea of sort of like where we're at with these players, Tez Johnson's a better version of what you would want out of Isaiah Bond right now. He is. He just
I
unfortunately comes at 160 pounds. If he came at 100, if the weight was exactly the same for both of these players, I'd have Tez Johnson above Isaiah Bond easy.
So that was 8 for me. 7 was Jalen Noel from Iowa State.
Nice.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. I actually think his speed's okay. Maybe not perfect for somebody his size, but man, at Iowa State had some kind of year with these two receivers.
I was just very shocked at how much I thought his speed was going to show up a lot more on a regular basis for me. And maybe I'm just a little maybe I'm overreacting a little bit to it, because I do like this player. When I watched both of them, when I watched Higgins and then I watched Noel, I actually initially liked Noel better when I was watching a couple of their early games. And then I've watched a little bit more, and I think Higgins wins in more translatable ways, and I get a little bit worried about Noel because so much of his game, to me, that I like has to do with that build and that explosiveness, and I really wanted to see that final gear from him be a little bit higher. So, look, there are moments when I felt like I saw it.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is why I was a lot higher on him. And if he comes into the combine and if he is a blazer, then I'm going to have to say to myself, like, all right, it's there for him. It's not like it's not, but we just need to see it a little bit more regularly. But I got a little bit worried in that regard with him. So that's why I was lower on Jalen Noel, because I think I had him, 15, and you have 7?
7.
Okay, all right. So
I definitely think the change of direction is better than the straight line speed. Like I thought the change of direction, short area quickness was borderline elite. I was like, whoa, when he puts a move on a corner in man coverage, they don't really have an answer for this guy. They really, really don't. If the ball is there, he's going to create space. So Noel, and another thing about Noel, he averaged over 15 yards per punt return this year. He has tons of experience as a return man. He is a
clutch,
very reliable, good punt returner. I was a big fan of his game. I just think his lateral agility allowed him to create separation on a consistent basis. Then 6 for me was Ayomanor from Stanford, who he'll be another fascinating one. I think there's just so much to like about him, even when you go through some of the faults. He's only a redshirt sophomore. He's 6'10". He's 210 pounds. This is a player that, 2022, we've talked about. He had the torn ACL, MCL, and meniscus. So that was a big injury he came back from. But he is a physical outside wide receiver. What he could do on the perimeter, like he could just out-muscle smaller coverage. I think this offense doesn't just put production on a platter for him, as I've said before. He has to really go earn it. We have the game from 2 years ago against Travis Hunter, where you saw what he did in a top matchup against him. He got the best of him, honestly. He's a very, very physical run blocker, and he plays a physical brand of football through the whistle over and over again. And I think as a redshirt sophomore coming off a serious injury 2 years ago, I think this guy's going to get bigger and stronger over the next 2 years, which is a scary, scary thought. I want to see more consistency with his hands. He's still learning how to kind of position himself and catch the ball cleanly all the time. There's just too many routine drops on the film from the last 2 years that he's got to clean up to be a number one wide receiver type. He's not you're not going to get a ton of lateral quickness with his size and play style. He's not going to run away from coverage consistently as well. He's going to make plays over the coverage. But I mean, Ayomanor, if you're looking for a perimeter wide receiver that plays a physical brand of football, he's got the goods.
Hell of a blocker. He's got the long speed with the track background. I think already, as somebody who is still a young football player, he's so smart in how he approaches the game. I mean, he very clearly is aware of winning off the line of scrimmage, winning with your feet, winning with your releases, winning with, veering your routes, attacking blind spots, the tempo in which, like I talked about with Isaiah Bond, accelerating, decelerating exactly when you need to. There is so much of his game that I really do love. The biggest issue to me is he's not a big time separator. It's just not his game. He's got that long speed. If you say, hey, hit a go route on this dude on press coverage, he'll be able to either give you a speed release or he can give you sort of like a skip and go. He can give you a diamond release to get to the outside, whatever it is. He can get even and pretty clean with a corner, and I think he's got the giddy up to get all the way down the field and create some separation. But he won't be a big separation guy from you in his breaks.
Yeah, 0 to 12.
With that being the case, he's got to be a little bit better in contested catch situations. He dropped the football a little bit more than I was comfortable with this past year. And I think you hear a lot of really smart people who talk about this. You know, Matt Harmon is one of them who love Matt's work, not only for what he does, like covering NFL draft prospects, but covering guys, you know, from a fantasy football angle and certainly just from a pro football angle as well. And he talks about like, hey, you can live with drops. Like drops are very much an up and down thing. Even at PFF, we categorize drops as an unstable metric, meaning it's not a guarantee that if you see a lot of drops one year, you'll see a lot of drops the next year. Or even if you don't see a lot of drops one year, that you don't see a lot of drops the next year. It's just sort of, that's one of those metrics and one of those things where a lot of it is sort of bang, bang plays, very quick plays, but some guys are able to separate themselves and really stand out in that category. Yeah. I wish Ayomanor had that a little bit more on his scouting report, but I have him at number 5. I believe in this wide receiver a lot. He reminds me a lot of James Jones and how James Jones played, where Jones was sort of a bigger type of wide receiver. They're very similar builds because Ayomanor is listed at like 6'2", 210 pounds. Both of them can block for you. Both of them give you that added agility, foot speed, some of that nuance that you want to see from those bigger wide receivers. James Jones could block pretty damn well. And at his best, he was a good contested catch receiver. And that's what the Ayomanor needs to be as well. So I saw his game similarly to sort of how we saw James Jones when he was doing his thing for the Packers.
So who do you have 10 to 6?
All right. 10 to 6. 10, I have Isaiah Bond, who we kind of already talked about here.
Yeah,
just the inconsistencies really sort of get in the way of Bond being a lot higher. Jack Bech. Bech is how you say his last name, correct? Bech?
That's what I've heard.
All right. So Jack Bech, I have at number 9, a player who I do like a lot. Do you have Jayden Higgins in your top 5?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Damn, Skippy. Okay. All right. We got Jayden Higgins at number 8 here because I have
a 5 if you want to talk about him now.
Well, I mean, yeah. All right. We can have the conversation because
he's going to kick off my rankings. I'm not like burying him in the top 3.
This is the first like new name that we have here because we already talked about Bech and Isaiah Bond. So this is the first like new name that we've got. So you got him at 5. I got him at 8. You were making me worried there because we're running out of like names that we could be different
Slots.
on. And I was really worried that you were like, yeah, I got Higgins at 21. I'm just gonna be like, 21?
What was I watching?
What am I watching? The wrong guy? I just got like the wrong numbers mixed up. I'm watching some like true freshman who's got no idea what he's doing. Has no idea the difference between his hands and his feet. So Higgins at Iowa State. He is the more productive player, I think, of the two. We talked about Jalen Noel already, but senior, just a 6'3.5". Actually, I think he's a little over. I think he's almost 6'4", where we've got him his official measurements.
Yeah, got him 6'3 3/4".
Okay, 6'3 3/4 in the official measurements, and then 210 pounds. So he is 86th percentile in height, 70th percentile in weight. So he's got really nice size to him. Connor's a really good football player. Sort of I talked about, he's not too far from Ayomanor. I think Ayomanor with the track background has him a little bit when it comes to the long speed. I think that he can stretch the field a little bit more vertically better than Jayden Higgins can, but both of them win with really great footwork for big men. And when you are an outside wide receiver and you take pride in your craft to be great off the line of scrimmage and win with footwork and releases and nuance really well and consistently, I'm going to take notice of that because it's harder to do when you've got more body to move, right? I mean, that's it. Sometimes you can boil it down to sort of the physical limitations, right? I mean, I want you guys to think of this. If you're sort of new to scouting, you're thinking about evaluating wide receivers in a certain way, something you always think about is like, okay, well, you can't evaluate guys in a vacuum because all different sizes of wide receivers have to operate differently. Bigger wide receivers, they come with pros and cons. The cons are often they have a lack of flexibility to them. They're a little bit more heavy footed. They have to move more weight. So it's tough for them to be more agile. It's tough for them to flip the hips with comeback routes and things like that. It's tough for them to really put their foot in the ground and have sharp cuts on their breaks because they have more body to move. When you're a smaller wide receiver, you have less body to move. So it is easier for you and your muscles to do it. Jayden Higgins is one of those wide receivers where he's not quite a rare type of a prospect, but he is somebody who gives you that extra wiggle for a big man, for an outside X type of a wide receiver. So I love that for him. I think he's got those smooth hips to be able to change direction pretty well for his size. I think he's somebody who can run the whole route tree because of what I've been talking about here. So there's a lot of route versatility. There's a lot of scheme versatility. You can play him as an X on the line of scrimmage. I think you can play him off the line of scrimmage as a flanker as well if you want to give him that advantage to not face as many hands in press coverage, although I do think that he can attack that pretty well. I think he's got the active hands and he knows how to get off of press coverage when those guys want to get those early hands on him. He's very quick, just like like an edge rusher. He's very quick to just disengage those hands, get around, whether it's just a chop to clear him or a two-handed swipe or a swim move or whatever it is. He knows how to keep himself pretty clean. I think because of that lack of separation and that lack of vertical speed, you see him push off a little bit when we get to those 20, 25, 30, 40-yard throws deeper down the field. And I think that's just sort of like a combination of lacking a little bit of that top speed. And I just don't think he's going to be a big yak guy for you, right? And so if you're looking for a big yards after catch type of a player, again, this is all sort of in the same bucket of why I'm a little bit lower on him than you are. Just I think because I've got a little bit of concerns about the long speed, but there's so much that he does that you love, and he's got the production. He knows how to be a go-to player in this passing offense. They go to him in really big situations. He's got the sure hands. So really cool journey too. 0-star recruit out of high school. So
yeah.
Started at Eastern Kentucky before he got over to Iowa State, and man, he's just had an incredibly productive career since he has been in AM. So Jayden Higgins, number 8 for me here.
Man, really good football player. The reason I had him one spot above Ayomanor is I just think he catches the ball better. Like
he
in every
does.
aspect.
I will give you that.
He's just got better hands.
I think Ayomanor's a better athlete, but Higgins definitely catches the ball better right now.
I mean, 2 drops in 2023, 2 drops in 2024. And this guy is
should have been
peppered.
0. What a bum.
Peppered. Yeah. Pump the numbers down. 87 catches, almost 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns this year. Off a season where he had 53 catches, 983 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Plays inside and outside. Excellent at positioning. He is a master of the slant route. Mm-hmm. Knows how to shield defenders. Great red zone threat. I thought he was shiftier after the catch than I expected with his size. There was a lot of aspects of his game, including his size down to a T, where there's Drake London in his game. Like, no joke. I'm like, man, it's not 1 for 1 because Drake London was a pretty unique prospect, but Higgins is the best parts of his game is what you loved about Drake London. And I love the brand of football this guy plays. I just think that you can move him all around the formation. I think that he impacts the game so much, not just in between the 20s, but in the red. And I think he plays like a guy that, no surprise, Eastern Kentucky to Iowa State. It's, it's not all sunshine and rainbows football. Like, this guy's had a road where I talk about this with Cam Ward a lot, right? Where, you didn't get the treatment as a 5-star recruit. You weren't this hot commodity even when you transferred. And you kind of have to go out and earn every little speck of dust out there. And I think he plays that way. So big fan. I think a player that everybody's going to really warm up to when they dive into the film that he built off of already really good 2023 film.
Yep. And I was talking about how 0.39 really good wins above replacement number for who was I talking about for that? Bech. I was just talking about or Bech. I was just talking about that for him. Jayden Higgins even better. 0.43. And he's been consistent right about that number the last 2 seasons. So not only has it been 1 season where he's had a really high wins above replacement, he's got 2 seasons of it. So really good work there from Higgins. Really cool story for him to get to this point to be a highly regarded NFL player. I got Xavier Restrepo at number 7. I just think that he knows how to win.
He knows how to get open.
I just think he knows how to get open, man. He reminds me of Sterling Shepard, sort of very similar builds. And, I think that Sterling Shepard's been... I think they tried him a little bit more as an outside receiver when he got to the NFL level. But, man, when I was watching him at Oklahoma, I always felt like the short area quickness, the body control, the contested catchability, how he was able to set you up with those routes, how he was able to find those soft spots in the zone. Like, man, it just, to me, it's so similar to the way that Sterling Shepard was able to win. And Shepard ended up getting taken in the second round and obviously hasn't quite lived up to that, but he's playing well in Tampa right now, back with Baker Mayfield. And so I see a lot of similarities between those two guys. I think that you highlighted him pretty well. The thing that stands out for you for Restrepo, 93rd percentile in separation overall, and then 88th percentile in terms of separation against single coverage. He just gets it. He knows how to attack different leverages. He knows how to put cornerbacks in hell despite not having the best type of athleticism. And, I know that you talked about some athletic limitations with him. I think that the long speed, not being able to threaten as much over the top, I think that goes into it. Also, it affects his yards after catch ability. And when you talk about him being a slot type of a player, you want guys that'll give you that yak ability. He has it, but some limitations there, especially with him being a little bit smaller of a player, having a little bit shorter of stride length and just covering a little bit less ground. I think that goes into it. But overall, I think he's a very overall all-around athlete, I should say. Great blend of strength, quickness, body control. I think he's pretty strong for his size. He is a precise route runner. He's got those strong, reliable hands. So, he's a little bit limited when it comes to his experience versus press coverage because Miami just didn't ask him to do it a lot. They let him to play in the slot and absolutely eat. And hey, guess what? He did. I think he's a workhorse type of a player. I think his numbers are great in so many different categories. In high school, he played all these positions. He played receiver, he played defensive back. I think he played linebacker or safety for a little bit. He even had over 500-yard passing in high school. I mean, that just goes to show you the type of all-around athlete that this dude was. So he had a lot of the big boys after him when it came to his recruiting, and he ends up going to Miami. He's been playing very, very well. So to me, he is one of my favorite wide receivers in this class. What you see is what you get with Xavier Restrepo in the best way. And I think he presents a high floor and somebody who can be a productive NFL player. So I have him at number 7.
Yeah, somebody that, can he be like Khalil Shakir at the next level?
A great comp.
The way Buffalo's used him, that's the road to success for him. And that'd be a hell of a start for Restrepo, Restrepo has a floor. And that matters a lot in this class where you can't say that about all these guys just with his route polish.
Number 6, Savion Williams from TCU.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear this one.
Dude,
pull my notes on him.
You talk about players that got into this exercise at the buzzer. I mean, he accepts a Senior Bowl invite. I go, okay, well, I got to watch the TCU's guys. I watched Bech and I go, wow, where they've been hiding this guy.
Right.
This is fantastic. He's got great film. Absolutely love him. And then the Senior Bowl adds this other TCU wide receiver. And I go, okay, there was some buzz when he accepted. I was like, I have not watched a lot of TCU this year. Have not heard a lot about Savion Williams. I remember watching a player, opposite Quentin Johnston, when he was there. And so I remember seeing him a little bit, but never really studied him. Brother, the potential that this kid has is stupid. 6'3.5", 228 pounds.
He's massive.
We're talking 87th percentile in height, 95th percentile in weight. I mean, this is a big boy. This is a NFL-built wide receiver. Now, you say, okay, he's a redshirt senior. He's a former 4-star. Why did it take so long? Why are we talking about him now? Why aren't we talking about him before? So he started his career at TCU mainly as a kick returner. When he was there his freshman year, he got on the field. He was a kick returner there for him. Played in 7 games the next year, started every game the next year, started every game the next year, started every game this year as well. So he has a ton of experience under his belt at this point, which you love to see. He's also a Feldman freak. He was on the Feldman Freaks list both for 2023 and 2024. Bruce Feldman said that he has a 10-foot 6-inch broad jump and a 40-inch vertical jump, which if he is above 6'3" and 228 pounds, holy shit, that is some incredible weight-adjusted explosiveness. There's also, so he played quarterback his last year when he was in high school, and Feldman notes, because his coach said this at TCU, I believe it was a coach at TCU who said this, because they were just, messing around in practice one day. It's like, oh yeah, after practice, hey, Savion, you played quarterback in high school. Why don't you throw this football? He said he threw it 80 yards in the air.
I believe it.
And he's like, it's just God-given talent The explosiveness, the power that this dude has. He squats over 600 pounds. He benches 335. He can power clean 350. What I'm trying to say is the man can host the pod. I know he's not quite 240, but we'll let him sub in. We have an official can host the pod wide receiver, and we don't get many of these around these parts. We really
unique
don't.
One.
The things that, so explosiveness and athleticism stand out right away. Long speed absolutely has it. You talk about those jumps, the broad jump, the vertical jump, they'll tell you how powerful that first step is for him. Now, his game needs a little bit more cleaned up. I think that there's some false steps that we've seen from him out of his releases. I think that when he's fighting deep down the field for those longer passes, he extends his hands a little bit too much, and I think he's going to get in trouble with OPI at the NFL level, but OPI is not the worst thing. As Benjamin Solak would say, hey, always commit OPI, because a lot of times they do not call it. So shout out to Ben Solak for that. And I do believe it, and I think Savion Williams could be a favorite of Ben's maybe because of this. But when it comes to what he does do well, it's so many things. He is an elite contested catch wide receiver. Some of the catches through contact, Connor, over the last 2 years, this man has a 100th percentile contested catch percentage. 72.2% of his contested catches were caught. So he's got crazy vice grips for hands. He's got pretty good separation numbers as well. 83rd percentile in regular separation, 42nd in single coverage situations. He is an extremely impressive athlete throughout. Really strong upper body for blocking assignments. And then my favorite part about him, and the reason why you talked about Jim Nagy saying the Cordarrelle Patterson comp makes sense for him, is because he is used all over in so many ways. I told you I said that he was a kick returner his first year when he was at TCU. They have used him as a wide receiver. They have used him at the X. They have used him as a flanker. They have used him as a move wide receiver before the snap. They use him in the slot, although not a ton. They use him as a true running back out of the backfield, and they use him as a wildcat quarterback in certain situations. This dude's an athletic freak. He's going to blow up the combine. It's going to be incredible to watch him at the Senior Bowl. I cannot wait for it. But simply put, they don't make many of Savion Williams. They really don't. And that's why I've got him at number 6, because the potential for this dude is through the roof. Now, for every DK Metcalf, there's a Chase Claypool, if you will, right?
Sure.
For every Cordarrelle Patterson, there's a Laviska Shenault. So there are guys who make it and guys who don't. But as coaches and scouts will tell you, big people beat up little people.
Yep.
And the NFL is a big people league. Savion Williams gives you the type of player that you covet in the top 50. This is the type of player that you draft and you go, we got to figure it out with this dude, because if we can't, that's on us as coaches. So everything that Savion brings to the table, is it quite perfect? No. Could he use a little bit more nuance? Yes. But man, there's already like some building blocks of, I watch him in his footwork and I watch him off press coverage and he does little things. I've seen some split releases from him. I've seen a little skip and go from him, and I go, okay, you're learning the releases. If I get a diverse release package from a player that has this sort of contact balance, strength, ability to get off of coverage in his breaks, the vertical ability, the yards after catch ability, the vision, the playmaker mentality, the blocking ability, everything. If you give me all these little things and even just that willingness to want to be better at the nuanced parts of the position, yep, give me this player. I would be shocked if he is not in my top 50 when it's all said and done.
My concerns with him are that he drops too many layups, and the route tree is a gigantic work in progress, where when he gets to a camp, you almost have to kind of have that Malachi Corley plan for him, where it's like, okay, we better have the creative stuff to keep you involved while we're working on the other stuff. But the difference is, like you said, Trevor, he's 6'4" almost. He's almost 230 pounds. When they get the ball in his hands, the contact balance is phenomenal. Guys just fly off of him. He's already been used on jet sweeps. Like you said, when they use him as a running back, they throw swing passes to him. 60 catches this year, 51 rush attempts. He averaged 6.3 yards per carry. He would be the guy to me that, like, as the Niners get ready to eventually move on from Debo, I'd be stashing this guy and use him like that, get him ready for that kind of role. Maybe not as much on the receiver plate. Debo didn't get enough credit for how much he does as a receiver, but all the other stuff, while he polishes the receiving game aspects of his actual skill set.
I don't totally disagree with you. I think he's a little bit further along as a route runner, but again, like it's not like he's good to go right now. He does still need to improve, but again, it's hard for me to watch this guy's film and think like, yeah, I'm going to talk myself out of this guy. In fact,
Right.
it's the other way around for me. I've got to find reasons to talk me out of a player like this with this type of potential. So that brings us to our top fives. Before we get into it, though, New Year's, it's coming around. It's around the corner. New Year's resolutions, it's time for it. But hey, instead of something that you'll forget about in a couple of weeks, how about resolving an investment in your kid's financial future? To all the parents out there, with the kids' investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life, your investments will keep growing long after those New Year's resolutions will fade. Giving your kids a solid start towards their financial future is important, and it's something that you can start right now. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account for Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids, they can't invest when they're minors, obviously, but with a kid's investment account, you can invest for them on their behalf, giving their investments more time to grow. The whole thing is online. It's easy to set up an account. Could just take 5 minutes, and then you could just manage it right from your phone and monitor all those investments there. Funds, they can be used for anything. You know, if we're talking about when they're truly a child, tuition, tutors, music classes, after school stuff, whatever it is. And then when they're young adults, maybe it's their first car, first house, starting a business, anything like that. There's a lot of different uses. Starts with $20, no contribution limits, tax advantages. Funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. No commission fees, just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start by investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/stock exchange. That's meetfabric.com/stock exchange, MEET fabric.com/stock exchange. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Savion Williams might be leader in the clubhouse for the 2025 Meet Fabric Award.
I mean, he's up there.
I'm going to be honest with you. So number 5 for you was
At wide receiver, definitely. He's the nominee.
5 for you was Jayden Higgins, right?
Right.
Who is 4 for you?
Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State.
Damn right he is, brother.
It's just like, I've watched Emeka Egbuka, I feel like, for 4 different shows now. And every time you're like, man,
Wait,
Emeka
you have other
Egbuka
shows?
is, if we, on this show.
Oh, this show. Okay, all right. Yeah,
Because think about it.
Right.
We did.
Oh, you had another draft show on me.
No, come on now. Never. Summer scouting the first time, and then thinking he was going to declare for the draft, and he didn't. And then summer scouting again.
Right.
And now the rankings again.
Yep.
And the good thing about Emeka Egbuka is he's the same player every time. Like polished route runner. Very reliable inside and outside, I think. He's a good athlete at about 6'1", 204 pounds, well built. He just has such a good understanding of how to change gears throughout his routes to create space and separation. All the things we talked about that are problematic with Isaiah Bond as a route runner, picture Egbuka as the opposite. He just has such a great understanding and control of his speed. He really is a route technician inside and outside.
Yeah.
He caught 37 first downs in 2024. He caught 9 of his 15 contested catch opportunities. He's got great concentration to make difficult grabs. He's very productive over the middle of the field, and we've seen that for 2 years in a row now. Really good run blocking wide receiver again, by the way. The Michigan State film, to me, was a clinic of run blocking. There's times where they line him up tight to the formation, almost like you would do with a move tight end.
Yeah.
And have him lead the way. I was like, oh my God, that says something a little different about the DNA of this guy. So yeah, I don't think he's got like this crazy high-end acceleration with him without the ball that kind of maybe separates him from being this bona fide typical number 1 wide receiver prospect or a top guy in the class. But man, he is so steady Eddie in everything that he does, and he doesn't ever have to come off the field. There's a lot of guys in this class where I'm like, he can't do this, he can't do that, or he's not built for this. Emeka Egbuka is in every personnel package that you're going to trot out there. And that matters a lot in today's game. So I've always liked Emeka Egbuka, Trevor, even after the down year in 2023 that I never thought was his fault.
Right.
But it was really nice to see him. It's not bounce back because I don't think the player ever changed. But the film this year, it's all there for you at the simplest form.
I am not going to let prospect fatigue get Emeka Egbuka.
Right.
We will, me personally, and it sounds like you as well, because we both have him at number 4, will not be doing that here on this podcast. This is, to me, a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 potential player at the NFL level. He has a lot of different types of comps to him. I've seen people, Robert Woods is one that I do like pre-injury. Robert Woods makes a lot of sense. Obviously, like the blocking and what Robert Woods was able to do as a blocker, I think that makes sense. It is hard for me, and I try not to be hyperbolic with these comps. I really don't. It's hard for me to not see Ayomanor St. Brown with him. I
get it.
And like, if St. Brown's not on the Lions, he's probably not quite what he is today. So
sure.
I think that's an important part to remember. But both of these dudes just offer you so much. They are so smart. They understand how to create throwing windows. They have such great chemistry with their quarterbacks.
He's been coached up.
He is just, it's everything about his game is just so damn solid, man. And whether you like the Robert Woods comp, or you like the Ayomanor St. Brown comp, or somewhere in between, he's that. Like, to me, it would be so hard for this guy to be worse than those two comps, which are some damn good football players. And I think people forget about how good Robert Woods was, certainly when he was at USC, and then pre-injuries when he's had in the NFL. So you mentioned it. The blocking ability is great. He's such a high IQ player. He knows how to attack different coverages. He knows how to attack leverages. He's great with his hands. He's good with releases. He's nuanced in his routes. His routes could maybe be, I mean, if you're watching him and you're like, if you watch him after you watch, say, like Tez Johnson or something like that, yeah, okay, the routes aren't as stopping on a dime and as sharp, but when you watch it a little bit more, I think that you can appreciate where Emeka Egbuka's routes are more rounded than maybe some other players. They're often more rounded, not mainly because he can't turn, but more of because he is trying to do like speed outs, or a speed like in a mesh route over the middle, or like something like that. Or it's just like it's an up and out, or it's an out and up, but like he's trying to make sure that it's as smooth as can be. And so it's a little bit less of, to me, it's less showcasing limitations and more nuance of knowing who he is as a player, knowing the timing that he has with his quarterbacks, and knowing how to stay clean off of defensive back. So I love Egbuka a ton. I think that he is a fantastic prospect. I think he's going to be in my top 25, top 20 when it's all said and done, because I gave him a very high score, and that just goes to show you how much I like the other guys in this class as well. Last year's wide receiver class was really good, and I'll get into this more in a second, but if you exclude Travis Hunter, because Travis Hunter obviously is a unique prospect with the cornerback ability as well, I really do think that these last couple of guys that we're talking about here, I wouldn't have ranked them above Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., but they would be in the conversation like with Rome Odunze, in my opinion. I don't think it's that much of a drop-off, especially for the two guys that I'm going to list above this.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's that crazy either. Like Brian Thomas Jr., who I really liked a lot.
Right.
I think I like him better, but it's different.
You don't have to agree with me in that regard.
I haven't thought of it yet.
People always like, well, what is this class like compared to last class? The two guys that I have that aren't named Travis Hunter that we're going to get to in a second, like, I genuinely like them enough where I would have talked about them with Brian Thomas Jr., with Rome Odunze.
Yes,
they would have been right there.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree on that. I thought we were talking about strictly Egbuka, right?
So Egbuka, I think I would have, versus last year, I think I would have had Egbuka above Brian Thomas Jr. because you were higher on Brian Thomas Jr. than I was. And I think I would have had him slightly above BTJ, which BTJ has been awesome. I mean, he's been even better than I thought that he was going to be, certainly early on at the NFL level. So I'll certainly admit that. But like, that's what I'm talking about with these dudes. I like these dudes at the top of this wide receiver class a lot.
Yeah, me too. I'm curious if we have the same top 4. So Egbuka was 4 for me. 3 was Luther Burden from Missouri. 2 was Travis Hunter from Colorado, and 1 was Tet McMillan from Arizona.
So I have Travis at 3, I have Luther at 2, and I have Tet at 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty close.
You want to talk about Travis first?
Yeah, we could do that.
Do you still think he's wide receiver over corner?
If I had to pick,
Yes.
no.
Okay.
I've changed my mind on that.
Okay.
I just am fascinated on what he's going to want to do, which is a combo that's like not worth having because we don't know. So, but over summer, I thought he was a much better wide receiver than corner. And I think he has taken so many strides at corner this year, and the value and uniqueness of corner that I'd rather draft him as a corner.
That's what I'm the same wavelength.
Yeah. So I think he has taken insane strides at corner this year, where I love him at corner now. I had some questions over the summer. Wide receiver over the summer, I didn't. I had him as a top 5 guy. Quick, explosive athlete, change of direction skills, stop and start, speed to threaten vertically, body control to stay in bounds is just brilliant. I had said over the summer, and I kept this note in, after the catch, he runs like Garrett Wilson, where it's just so sharp.
Yeah, man.
His stop and start, and that slender body that slips through defenders. The kid plays a fearless brand of football over the middle of the field. Shedeur put him in some bad spots the last 2 years. I'll say that watching film. Like this
contested catch spot, like hospital balls?
He gets clobbered a couple times where I'm like, I give him a lot of credit trying to make a play.
So
a couple of them are scary.
So he's obviously slender, right? He's 6'1", 185 pounds, which is 48th percentile for height, 15th percentile for weight. So he is a slender wide receiver. Dude, he has a 66.7 contested catch percentage over the last 2 years.
Oh.
That's 99th percentile.
I put A+ ball skills. A+.
Yes.
Because the way he plucks the ball out of the air and the focus is phenomenal. Yeah, you're right. He is a great contested catch player for not a strong guy.
Did not expect that.
Like, this isn't going to be to pile on Shedeur pod because Shedeur is going to go in the first round, the top 10, top 5, number 1. Who knows? It's not the point here. When you watch Travis Hunter at wide receiver, though, the plays he makes for any quarterback, and Shedeur made a lot of good throws away from Travis Hunter to the other guys. But I'm just saying, what Travis Hunter could do for a quarterback is, you're like, wow.
Yep.
Well, that's why he was number 2 to me. He's such an explosive athlete, but even when there's dedicated coverage to him that he's going to be playing in tight quarters or going into a dangerous area of the field, he finds a way to make something happen.
I think it'd be crazy if now I understand that like quarterback is a different conversation, but like I think it's crazy if this guy's not the number 1 pick of the draft.
I agree. I don't. It might not be close.
He is such a rare athlete, and when I say that, he is a rare athlete athletically, but I'm actually meaning that as a playmaker mentality type of dude.
Like see ball, get ball every time he's on the field.
He is a takeover player every single time he steps on the football field, no matter what position he is playing. Now, as a wide receiver, as you would expect, like the negatives of him and the reason why I have him as like wide receiver 3, just strictly as a wide receiver, is the lean frame can get thrown around a little bit, right? When he's up against press coverage, he's still feisty, but he can get pushed around a little bit. He can get pushed around at the catch point, even though he's got a great contested catch percentage just because he's got such damn good ball skills and great hands. But he can still get sort of bodied when it comes to the catch point. That only gets harder at the NFL level. The footwork and the fundamentals to get off of press coverage, I mean, it's not as diverse as it could be. And if he was a full-time wide receiver, I've got faith that it could certainly develop and get even better. But like if you're just judging him as a wide receiver right now, you know, if he's getting drafted to be a corner and then you're moving him over to wide receiver, that's sort of the umbrella, the lens in which I'm viewing him. And so he could get a little bit more precise, I think, in his routes and how he's getting off the line of scrimmage. You know, when he's fighting off of defenders down the field, he can get bumped a little bit. You know, when he's playing defenders who are in off coverage, when he gets to that break point and they get hands on him, it can be a little bit more difficult for him to get free and get clean. And sometimes you see a little bit more of those contested catch situations. But, dude, super long arms, fully maximizes the catch radius.
Oh, yeah.
Like, ball skills are just, like you said, A+. They're unbelievable. And then, the playmaker mentality. Travis Hunter just gets it. He is the best version of the best player on the playground, but he just really does it at a super high college football and NFL level. And I think
It like
that's really
almost breaks your confidence going against him.
Oh, dude,
Like
yes.
we don't have an answer for this. I don't know what you've all been there out on the playground. You're like, there's that one guy that he's just so much different than everyone else, no matter what sport you're playing, whether it's pickup basketball, football. You go play beer pong with him, and he's the dude hitting like 7 shots in a row. And it's
hold on now. Hold on.
Just saying.
I don't get
either
intimidated.
got it.
I don't get intimidated against anybody in cone.
Why don't you start us off with Luther Burden? Because you haven't met 2, I haven't met 3.
Yeah. So Luther Burden, I'll be honest with you. Missouri's wide receiver, absolute stud, 5-star wide receiver. He's a St. Louis kid, ends up, committing to Missouri, sort of dream school, getting to go to Missouri. Absolutely loves it. Freshman year, he was a standout player. Sophomore year, he was an incredible player last year. This year, a little bit more quiet for him. And I wondered if I was going to watch the film and be like, man, did Burden fall off a little bit here? I'm here to tell you no. He did not. And though the year was not what Missouri wanted, though the passing attack at Missouri was not what they wanted, I did not see a player that gave up on film. I did not see a player that mailed it in. I did not see a player that was not the same sort of playmaker we saw the year before. I genuinely believe that Luther Burden's lack of production this year simply came from the fact that Missouri's passing offense was not nearly as good as it was the year before. So 5'11", 208 pounds. Love the overall size. I mean, he's below 6 feet, so you got to be all right with that. But 208 pounds is 65th percentile. You absolutely love it, and that's a great way to start just who he is as a wide receiver. He's a fantastic all-around athlete. He's been that even all through high school when he earned that 5-star recruiting label. He was a state championship player in basketball, and I think that you see that sort of not just multi-sport background, incredibly successful multi-sport background. He averaged 18 points a game as a basketball player in high school. It's not like this guy was like, oh, he's a good athlete, let's put him in the other sports too. No. This dude was great. He was a fantastic basketball player, and I got to think that he actually probably could have played college basketball as well, but he's a 5-star wide receiver. We love him for that on this podcast because we get to talk about him here. He's a true natural playmaker when the ball gets in his hands. You go back to Travis Hunter and what we said about Travis Hunter, how this is just a playground type of a player who, when you get the ball in his hands, it feels like he's going to score the football. You really feel that way with Luther Burden, and I think that shows. He's got really high yards after catch scores. His yards after catch, 87th percentile over the last 2 years. His yards per route run, 88th percentile, so he's getting used in a ton of different ways. 94th percentile in regular separation, 64th percentile in separation versus single coverage. Really high athletic scores. We've got in-game athletic scores, or GAS, as Sam Monson would call it here at PFF, and those scores were consistently in the 90s for him for the last 3 years that he was playing at Missouri. Really good balance. I mean, it's hard to not see Deebo Samuel with him. Again, a very high, lofty comp here, but the body types a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact of a build, the ability to bounce off a contact, the ability to create those yards after catch, being a major screen player, somebody who you could get the ball to him in jet sweeps and out of the backfield as a running back. Again, like, this is the type of player that we're talking about here. And he's got that similar build. Now, he can get pushed around a little bit in the blocking game. I think the blocking game could be a little bit better for him. I think he could take a little bit more pride in that. And the other thing with Luther Burden is, I think he's got great hands. I do. I wish he would attack the football a little bit more in the air. I wish that he would not let it come to him nearly as much. I wish he would go up and attack the football in the air, because there is a player that we're going to talk here at number 1 where that is never an issue. Never. And that's a quality that I love in a wide receiver, especially with a wide receiver that has that all-around ability that Luther Burden does. I wish we could see a little bit more of it. So I think he's a really sharp route runner. I think he's a precise route runner. I think he knows how to find those soft spots in the zone. Like, there's just so much to love about this player. My little bottom line, if you will, scouting report that I wrote for him: Burden's a 5-tool, multi-sport ideal athlete for the receiver position at the NFL level. His potential is as well-rounded as they come as a first-round talent who could succeed at any receiver position in an offense. I believe in this guy a ton. With him having such a down year this year, I really did wonder if I was going to watch Burden and be like, just don't love him as much as I did over the summer. I still love this guy a lot. I think he's going to be one hell of a pro.
I think so too. It's one of those that you need a ton of context when turning on the Luther Burden tape and just kind of see what happened to him in this offense this year. And it's not that it was a disaster, because if it was a disaster, we wouldn't talk about Luther Burden as a top 15 pick. There would be some more serious ramifications. But he's an exceptional playmaker. He's a tough player. The pound for pound strength is so good. He's got the body control. He can high point. I think he has absolutely mastered the slot fade. When you watch him run a slot fade, it's just a thing of perfection. All the ability to create yards after the catch. It's kind of got that look out when they get him in any kind of space. The final note I wrote is just that he's just got such a bigger ceiling in the right NFL offense. And I think a lot of NFL teams are gonna outline that. Honestly, I think they're gonna see that with him. And some of it, the quarterback at times, the yards per reception dropped to 3 full yards this year, which is alarming. It went from 14.1 to 11.1. But you watch some of the missed opportunities from the play under center, and it doesn't really shock you.
Yep. All right. So then I introed Luther Burden, who I had at number 2, but we have the same player at number 1. I'll let you intro Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, here at the top of the list.
Yeah, Tetairoa McMillan, somebody that over summer I compared to Cortland Sutton, 6'5", 210 pounds. I mean, this is a dude that he is a big-bodied perimeter target. It's, massive, massive size. And you look at the production now over the last 2 years. In 2023, he had 90 catches, over 1,400 yards. He averaged 15.6 yards per catch. In 2024, in one less game, he has 84 catches, over 1,300 yards, and 15.7 yards per catch. This guy has caught now 26 touchdowns over the last 3 years. Just a totally different monster when it comes to finishing drives. He is the man when you want to convert a drive, not into a field goal, but into a touchdown. We talked about this over summer. He played with quarterback Noah Fafita since high school. So there was a familiarity there that really kind of heated up this connection. Big, strong hands, like catcher mitt, kind of meat hook hands that just when he gets around the football, it looks like he's
MEET hook.
Yes, I mean MEAT, not MEET here. The contested catch rate has gone up over the years, going back to 2022, how much it improved the following next 2 years after it in 2022.
Yeah.
He's open when he's covered, whether it's down the sideline, in the red zone. He can climb the ladder. The one-handed grab to him, I talked about the big hands. The one-handed grab's routine. It's routine. I mean, the strides, these long strides with that 6'5" frame, chew up more turf. Where it might not look like he's moving faster than a Tez Johnson, but when you have those kind of strides, the build-up speed vertically down the field to get over the top of the safety, it's natural to him. And you just look at, I'm going to pull up some advanced stats here as well. Just the production in every aspect of the game, like key areas of winning a football game and sustaining offense. This guy just checks the box in every single aspect of it. And he really, really does. 63 first downs in 2023. And then you look at 2024 where you're like, man, it's naturally he has to have a drop-off, right? And he had 55 first downs. I would say the only thing is he had more drops this year than the previous year. I don't think Fafita played as well this year.
No.
Which was a massive problem in this offense. Fafita took a step back, and I don't think Tet fell victim to that because he was still awesome. He was awesome. And like the thing with Tet is at that size, you can just play him wherever you want. He could be the type of catalyst. I don't think he's this player yet, but he could be the type of catalyst for an NFL offense that Nico Collins is for the Texans, where you look around and you go, the quarterback looks at that outside perimeter target and he trusts him when he's open and when he's not.
Yep.
And when we need to finish a drive, I know where I'm going. And if he's one-on-one coverage, I'm throwing it. I don't care. And the kind of confidence that builds for a young quarterback is out of this world. That's the kind of player Tet is. And I thought Travis Hunter gave him a hell of a run this year. Like I at least went into this with an open mind. But I watched Tet McMillan again after having wide receiver 1 this summer. No, I think I had Burden wide receiver 1 this summer.
I had Burden wide receiver 1 this summer.
I had Burden wide receiver 1 this summer, but Tet was. I felt really good about Tet at 2, where I was like, this can go a couple ways this year. And it went the way that Tet McMillan is the best wide receiver in the draft.
He's open when he's covered is a great way to sort of encapsulate, who Tet McMillan is. You talk about some advanced PFF stats that point to how good this guy is. I loved this one that I found. He had a 45.2 threat percentage on opening drives, fourth most in the FBS. So when Arizona was opening games, when they were setting the tone, their first possession of the game, Tet McMillan was getting the football. It didn't matter who they were playing. It didn't matter which day. It didn't matter at what time. They were throwing this dude the football on the opening drives because he was their go-to weapon. And I love that sort of faith, and it just goes to show how emphasized this player is. Again, fourth highest threat percentage on opening drives in the FBS this season was Tet McMillan. So you did a great job sort of highlighting everything that he did well. I can't remember if you said it or not, but 6'5", 210 pounds. I mean, so that's just the length, the catch radius, everything's so fantastic. The strengths that I have written down, the height absolutely stands out on tape even before the first snap. Those long strides, they are smooth and they build up to a pretty decent top speed. The hips flip much faster than you would expect given his size. Impressive acceleration. Rare to see any sort of false steps coming out of his releases. He's very comfortable maximizing that huge catch radius, like you mentioned, for the one-handed catches or even the two-handed catches. He is actually, he's going to naturally get a lot of the Mike Evans comps, but here's the thing. I'm not saying he's better than Mike Evans. He is different than Mike Evans, but an area where he is different than Mike Evans in a good way is Mike doesn't give you a lot of yak. He sort of did when he was at Texas A&M, just really hasn't at the NFL. It's not his game. Tet will give you yak. When Tet catches the football, he is looking to get yards after the catch.
Yeah, he moves a little different at that size.
He wants to become a playmaker. He is looking for those extra yards. So I think that he does not. The thing that I love about him too here that gives me so much faith that he's going to be a great NFL player is there are a lot of guys that rely on their physical gifts. Going all the way back to the beginning of the show, which is almost like 2 hours now at this point. When we talked about Kyron Lacy, Kyron Lacy just relies on his physical abilities to win as a wide receiver. Tet, of anybody in this group, he's in tier one, maybe not number one, but he's in the top group of guys who could simply rely on their physical gifts, athletically or size-wise, to win. He doesn't. He wants more. He has high IQ moments that you see in his game. He runs routes about as well as you could ask a big man to run his routes. My bottom line scouting report for him, McMillan brings all pro potential in length, athleticism, and IQ. Yep. He is a smooth criminal of a wide receiver who is the focal point of Arizona's offense with great return on investment. He is a unique talent who deserves to be considered in the top 10. So there we go. That's Tet McMillan, number one overall for us on both of our lists. You mind reading your 20 to 1 really quick to recap the show?
Hell yeah. Okay, so 20 all the way down to 1. Ty Felton from Maryland at 20. Torrey Horton from Colorado State at 19. Caden Prather from Maryland at 18. At 17, Savion Williams from TCU. 16 was Brew McCoy from Tennessee. 15 was Pat Bryant from Illinois. 14 was Xavier Restrepo, the slot receiver out of Miami. 13 was Tez Johnson, the speedster out of Oregon. His teammate at 12 was Evan Stewart. 11 was Trey Harris from Ole Miss. 10 was Jack Bech from TCU. 9 was Jalen Royals from Utah State. 8 was Isaiah Bond out of Texas. 7 was Jalen Noel from Iowa State. And then down to 6 was Ayomanor from Stanford. 5 was Jayden Higgins from Iowa State. 4 was Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. 3 was Luther Burden from Missouri. 2 was Travis Hunter from Colorado. Number 1 was Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona.
And then for me, 20 is LSU's Kyron Lacy. 19, Ole Miss wide receiver Antoine Wells, Juice Wells. 18 for me was Evan Stewart from Oregon. 17, Pat Bryant from Illinois. 16, Kobe Hudson from UCF. 15, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. 14, Torrey Horton from Colorado State. 13, Trey Harris from Ole Miss. 12, Tez Johnson from Oregon. 11, Jalen Royals from Utah State. 10, Isaiah Bond from Texas. 9, Jack Bech from TCU. 8, Jayden Higgins from Iowa State. 7, Xavier Restrepo from Miami. 6, Savion Williams from TCU. 5, Ayomanor from Stanford. 4, Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. 3, Travis Hunter from Colorado. 2, Luther Burden from Missouri. And number 1, was Tetairoa and McMillan. We would love to hear from you guys. We know you got takes on wide receivers, whether you are an NFL draft head, whether you are somebody whose team needs a wide receiver, whether you are a fantasy football devy person who's watching this like a true sicko, and we love you for it way in advance for whenever your rookie drafts are going to be. We'd love to hear from you. If you got an initial wide receiver ranking list, again, wide receiver, we know that it's an easier position for people to have opinions on. We would love to see as many wide receiver rankings as possible from the people. It starts a lot of cool conversations. It's a cool way to go back and forth, and everybody's got their flavor of guys. As you can see on the show with two hosts who have two very different lists on a lot of the same names. We would love to hear from
you. And now we hate each other.
And now we do. This is the last episode of the pod. Merry Christmas.
Never doing this again.
So best way to do that, youtube.com/NFL Stock Exchange. If you're audio only, Twitter, Instagram, Tampa Bay Trey, Conjay Rogers. That's the best way to get in on the show. We're going to be doing a lot more of these, I think, over the next month and a half. The episode timing of when they're going to drop might change a little bit just because it is a lot of film to drop, but we're going to give you as many positions as we can before All-Star Weekend rolls around with East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl as well. Before we get to that, we do have one more Fix Your Franchise episode that we are getting to next week. It will be the Carolina Panthers. I know a lot of people out there were suggesting some other teams. We're sorry if we didn't get to you this year, but we try to do as many as possible.
It's always next year.
We really want to. Well, we don't want to be.
You can always suck next year.
Yeah, come on. Don't say that to the people. We want to get to as many position reports as we possibly can. So we're doing one more. We're doing the Carolina Panthers on Monday. Connor, anything else before we get out of here?
No, marathon, ton of fun. Man, I feel like Forrest Gump after running across the country right now. Like, I'm tired. Gonna take a day off from watching tape, and then whatever position group is next, full throttle. We're back in it for next week.
I love this. Was so much fun, man. Getting back, awesome. Really diving back into the tape. I hope you guys enjoyed these episodes. Yes.
So I'm gonna read real quick the other guys I watched, just so people. I know the comments are always like,
yeah, sure, yeah, you can.
Okay, so. I watched.
Yeah, you can show off. You watched a couple more guys than I did. You think you're better than me? It's
really.
Fine. Yeah, no, you think you're better than me? It's fine.
No, it's not that crazy of a list. Taquan Felton and Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech. Theo Weiss Jr. from Missouri. I said the 3 Colorado guys, and I also watched a little bit of Ricky White from UNLV. But there are a lot more receivers I know I need to watch, and I appreciate all the names you guys tweeted us. I promise for the final rankings we will get to the. I mean, if we did 20-something for this show today, we're going to be watching almost 50 wide receivers.
Yeah, we're going to be close. It's going to be extensive list this year. So make sure you slam that subscribe button because we're going to go deeper on this draft class than we ever have for any other draft class, and I'm excited for it. For Connor Rogers, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We'll see you guys next week.